Hello. So I'm going to apologize now that you guys are stuck hearing me first, and then we're also going to block before you can go to lunch. So I guess this chat GPT thing is kind of popular, so we wanted to get a small panel together just to talk about it a little bit. And I want this to be interactive, so we will have mic runners throughout this session. So if you have questions, if you want to add something, please feel free to interact. I will tell you, for the speakers we have on stage, somebody may have mentioned in the back that they did not get back till after 5 a.m. this morning. So if you can figure that individual out and ask them very targeted questions, it would be tremendous fun for that individual. But I'm not going to tell you who it is, so it's more of the challenge for you guys. So with that, I just wanted to invite out Jacob, David, Alex, and Thomas, and we'll get this panel rolling.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jacob. I'm currently the CTO of a Danish company, MSP company called SAC-IT. I actually demoted myself last year from see everything to CTO when I did an M&A. So first time here, not a see everything.
Awesome, thank you. David?
I'm David McKenna. I am the technical director for running computers. We're an MSP, but we've been kind of going for 29 years. We obviously started as a VAR and have evolved. We really work in South Africa, but with clients around the world. And obviously, we're really interested in AI and what it can do for our business and our clients' businesses.
Awesome. Alex?
Hi everyone, I'm Alex Bidhendy. I run a company called Protomate in the UK, and I provide PSA and RMM assistance and systems and automation implementations for MSPs. I've been doing it for about 15 years, my own business for 1 year, the anniversary this week in actual fact, and in the industry for about 25. Thanks very much.
Awesome. Thomas?
Hi, I'm Thomas Collier. I'm the technology manager within Cheops Technology. I'm responsible for our cloud platform, our services platform, our operations. So I'm interested to know how we can put AI to the business.
Awesome. So I guess to start, just how do you guys define AI? Like we had a bit of a conversation in the back between AI and ML, and there's lots of different conversations between the two, but Jacob, we'll start with you, I guess. How would you define AI?
Well, for me, it becomes an AI when it starts making decisions based on its own. Not just from learning from 1,000 cases what best practice is, but actually deciding on its own whether or not to do stuff or not to do stuff.
Okay, so that's fair. When it starts making those decisions, I don't know if anybody here has watched Terminator where the robots take over, or any of those other shows, but do you guys have concerns? And I'll let you each individually answer what your thoughts are, but what about that scares you? Like, so Thomas, do you want to go first?
Well, AI is great, but like I said before, it's built by Americans and with their ethical standards, with their data sets, and they're rolling out globally. So there's some scarcity about having your identity, your culture being absorbed in one big blob of data, and you will be simulated into one piece. So it's scary, but it's also very advantageous about operations and doing things we are not good at as humans. Speed and efficiency, productivity sometimes. Yeah. I didn't say that to my people, sorry.
Alex, you have any thoughts on what about it scares you?
Yeah, well, I've got quite a few thoughts on it actually, but I'm not going to go into all of them. But one of them is really about compliance and making sure that obviously the data that we're presenting from a customer perspective is all managed carefully and secure, and it's stored in the right place, because obviously we've got considerations like GDPR to be concerned with, and other compliances for security reasons and all that kind of stuff. We need to ensure that if we're early adopters of this technology, which all of us really are, if we're looking at it now, we're making sure that we're doing it in a controlled manner and very, very kind of cautiously. I'm pretty skeptical about jumping in with 2 feet at this point in time, and I think a lot of others share that sentiment as well.
Okay, that's fair. David, are you scared to jump in first, or where are you sitting?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm scared to jump in, but I think one of the things that concerns me is the guardrails. And actually, probably the converse to what most people would think. I think what worries me is how people will abuse the guardrails. If you look at something like Wayno, which is Google's autonomous driving, The guardrails protect human life at all costs, which means that if kids want to play baseball in the streets, they can. No car is ever going to hit them. It means if a running club wants to run down Fifth Avenue, they will. And I think that these guardrails really have to be well thought out. There's a social contract between pedestrians and vehicles, and at the moment is vehicles will kill you. As soon as that's gone, how does that actually change how we interact with everything?
Yeah, totally fair. Jakob?
Yeah, in the North, we're always rapid technology absorbers, right? So I don't know if I'm scared of it. One place where I can see, ethical and decision-making problems, if we allow the AIs from different microsegments to interact, because that would be very interesting and scary for me if two AIs started interacting with each other and deciding to make joint decisions or to go in opposite directions. So I think with respect to boundaries and stuff, I'm very much for microsegmentation here, also to keep data secure and isolated so you don't get all this, treat everybody the same, because we are not the same, and I don't think the AI should treat everybody the same. So that would be my concern. That would be interaction between AIs.
So just out of curiosity, I mean, I feel like in the last 6-8 months, AI in general has just steamrolled. Like my kids, they use it to write poems, and like when I said to my son, he was in the car one day, I was like, "Oh, are you playing with ChatGPT?" He's like, "You know what that is?" And he was like amazed. And I'm like, I'm not that old. But I mean, would you say that this is just a brand new technology, or has it just been kind of the evolution? Now we're really starting to see it accelerate rapidly. How do you guys feel about that?
It's certainly not a new technology by any means, but it is something that's obviously just come into the public eye in the last 12 months, and there's a buzz and an excitement about it, and everyone wants to get on board and utilize it, and people are now starting to look at how to implement it in their businesses, and I think that is it's exciting and it's empowering for a lot of people. The problem is, I'm again quite skeptical. Where do we draw the line? Where do we understand, like Jakob was saying, if AIs are starting to communicate with each other, then surely that is the stuff of Skynet, and we're heading for, perhaps not literally, but because of that kind of level of interaction between the two, which potentially could happen, are we starting to get into the realms of, science fiction and warnings about things like that, which we need to be aware of? But it's a difficult
We
one.
need to teach you to play
answer.
tic-tac-toe. For anybody who has more games.
And that's something I'm really worried about, because ChatGPT ruled the world for months, and all AI projects suddenly was there, but they weren't there. ChatGPT opened the world on the public side. Everybody was doing AI research. BART was there, autonomous vehicles. We did a lot of AI, and suddenly every project came out with AI. So we're rushing things to finish to have a commercial product, and we're now doing commercial things without ethical boundaries, without other boundaries, just to be first to market. I like the idea of Halo being first to market, but everybody's now wanted to be that one who says, I'm at the first in the world to deliver AI. And I expect it will be a good implementation, but we're not sure. And nobody's sure for that at this point, and it feels rushed now. So that's what I'm scared of.
And I think if you compare to some of the other evolutionary steps that we took as mankind, along the way, what has been true about them all is that they've been driven by people doing stuff. Like when we started doing genome manipulation, it was like very cumbersome, very hard to do. And this is one of those things that tech can do. If it's a pure tech thing, then that rise to exponential is it's so fast, we can't really fathom it as human beings, because it's just overtakes us every time. So that's a concern about implementation, right? That we're implementing it at a speed where before you got it implemented, which will take you 2 weeks, the next version is out there, and it's more advanced than the one you implemented, right?
But I mean, I think if you look at it, we were using neural networks and machine learning when I was doing applied maths at varsity. None of it is new. What is new is that it's got a very simple interface that lets the man on the street interact with it. And it's that human interaction that should scare us all, because certainly there are bad actors using it as much as there are good actors. And I think it's critical, not that I think you can put the genie back in the bottle, but I do think that we have to think long and hard about what we're doing with this.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add to that as well, yesterday in my session I was talking about potential for data poisoning, so targeting old domain names which have, hackers targeting old domains which are no longer used but have previously been indexed by AI and training data for OpenAI and other facilities. And that data is being corrupted by new data, that new false information that's being injected. And of course, what OpenAI have done recently, which is, I think, a positive step, is to make sure that they provide warnings, certainly in things like ChatGPT, to make sure that people are aware that it could what's spitting out is potentially false information. But how far does that go? I mean, is it sufficient enough to be able to? When you're talking about the human interaction element, you know that you're interfacing with a system that you're having a conversation with, which is fine. But when you apply that to your business, in the back end, is it actually giving you those warnings? Is it telling you that, I know that a lot of businesses that are employing this are using their own data to train it on, which I think is great, and they're using it in Azure, which, you've got a separate instance, which is fine, and so it's a bit more secure. But when you're looking at, interacting with that public facility or GPT-4, as it is today via the APIs, is that information, is it trustworthy? Can we rely on it? Certainly if we're looking at, there was a great example by Jimmy, showed it yesterday, there he is, hi, with scraping ticket data and looking at all the information from the ticket and then summarizing that information, which I think is, very useful. Personally, I'm a little bit skeptical of that, as long as you have measures in place, which I know Jimmy does, to ensure that that data is cleansed correctly and you have a verification process by a human, that's fine. But where do you draw the line, and how is that, kind of saving you more time, or is it just making you less efficient in the long term? I really don't know what the long-term results with that might be.
So do you guys feel like it's even ready to be integrated in MSP? I know everybody's talking about it, everybody's wanting to use it. There's obviously benefits from generating scripts on the fly, it expedites, but do you think it's ready for the mainstream yet?
Depending on what you want to do, there are different ways to set AI to your business. So if it's about automating and getting rid of the repetitive tasks, yes, of course. That's the main task of what you should AI use for. For answering questions, I don't know. I have seen AI augment data with things that are not there because he wants to enhance the experience, embellish things, or add things that are not there. And I'm not sure if I want to have that in a commercial context without any vetting. And like you said, if you put up guardrails, people will not check those things anymore. They will oh, AI generated, send. And they will not look at the content or will not review it because it's 99% accurate, but it means from 100 tickets, you have one ticket which is inaccurate like hell. So I'm afraid about having interaction with human people with AI. Putting AI to a specific task, yeah, of course.
But you could argue that's why this is the forum, or this is the group of people who should start using it, right? Because if we start using it internally, it will be as part of internal processes primarily, right? And we will be, vigilant of these errors and these guardrails in a way that a normal person without tech experience wouldn't be. So I think that the right place to start it is inside IT divisions and IT deliverers.
Completely true, but we have to be careful that it's not a babysit. People are still engineers, they need to know how things work, they need to know how to troubleshoot. If everything is fed by a spoon, will they only rely on their babysit, and how accurate is it? Will they grow up to be, lazy, true?
But hasn't this always been like the dream from
we're all lazy.
From the old Greek days, right? Lying around, doing symposiums, drinking wine, having, discussions about the universe and letting all the machines do the stuff.
We're lazy, but we don't have to enable it.
So, I mean, one of the stats that I read is that GPT, 93% of the content is accurate. I mean, 7% being wrong is a really high percentage, particularly because the 7% hides really well in plain sight. So if you ask GPT to give you figures on, I don't know, world population growth, can you trust the answers it's giving you? It's certainly going to give you an answer, but you always need to verify. And so we get back to that kind of trust but verify thing. And potentially within our organizations, because we're aware of that, if we make it patently aware to our staff that they need to have their guard up for that, maybe we are the right place to be doing this stuff. And maybe we should actually, before we go and take it to our clients, we should be understanding it properly. Because make no mistake, our clients are already asking us about it. And so we should rather have the experience and be able to go in and actually speak openly about it, what we've seen, what we've understood, rather than having them go to another MSP or another provider to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, you guys know there's the ethical issues, there's the, what's the quality of data coming out. Yeah, I get all this, we should be cautious. But fact is, there are MSPs right now using AI, going to their customers, guys, I'm going to do support for half the price of these guys. I use AI. AI is the buzzword, right? Customers are going to eat this up. How do you compete with people being more reckless, but getting enough right that they can make it work?
If I can just answer that from a non-MSP perspective, my customers are MSPs, so I've got to stay on board with all of this kind of stuff and kind of balance up what is actually beneficial and what isn't. So, staying with the community is quite crucial in that, and making sure that you're hearing what's going on. Forums like this are great for me to learn more about that. But from a customer perspective, as in like an end user perspective of other MSPs, I mean, they're looking at this themselves. I mean, they want to use this in their own businesses as well. So they're asking the same questions as we are, but we have to try and be experts where we can. And I think that's a responsibility that's on us, and we have to do that. So to answer the question, I think from a non-MSP perspective, we really need to start looking at what these businesses are doing right, and what they're doing at scale, because if it can scale, then you know that it's likely to be something that is trustworthy, and that, again, it's really down to the interactions.
But I think that as a lot of other stuff that has arisen during this last decade where tech is really taking off, I think that also COVID taught us that, and I may be an old softy here, but I think that the human interaction part is still one of the main drivers in that customer relationship. So if you tell them you're using AI to get things fixed quickly and to be better at pricing and be more efficient, I don't think that's going to be an issue. But if you think you can leave it to AI to interact with customers, then I think you're dropping the ball completely. So I think what it should do is it should free up my techs to have more time on the phone talking to customers while the AI is doing the stupid work. All the intelligent work will still belong to people. And we'll just have to move up that food chain once again. And like when we got the wheelbarrow, if it's operated by people, then it's safe. It's when we let it run on its own, it becomes unsafe.
And it's not the first time we saw this. We have automation, which was the same part. You could automate everything. Why should we pay an MSP to do? We have those tooling for years. Machine learning, data analytics, it will change the world. The practicality of it is that it's good for enterprises. It's not really fit for those small companies, and we have to wait until it's matured, or if it's being enabled for us. But Coca-Cola will use it today, and will use it in 5 years. So I'm not really worried, because that's elements that happens in our business. It will enhance our business, and those people who want to be the cowboys of the market, they will drive themselves out. They will only find those people who want to be cheap, doesn't want quality, they just want bucks for banks, whatever that word is. Are those people our customers? Not for me.
Not for me.
Hi, yes. I have a question. Everybody talks about AI, and there's a lot of opinions about it. I was wondering, there's also education and certification. Microsoft has AI certifications, the other vendors. Do you guys invest in education and certification on AI, and if so, which ones?
That's going to be an easy no. I'm not there yet.
Okay.
So we probably spent the last 3 months in our organization going through AWS and Azure's AI options, not to use internally, but to offer to clients. We have a lot of clients who want to do AI and ML. So we spent a lot of time looking at Redshift, Data Wrangler, and the other tools from AWS and Azure. We did certification along the way because it was just part of the process. I'm not convinced the certification makes us any better at implementing it than anyone else. But I did think that as part of the process, it was a worthwhile exercise.
Yes, thank you. If AI is going to have such an ethical impact, like what data it uses, is it biased, is it going to cost jobs, isn't it too important to leave to the tech sector, and should the government step in?
By all means, yeah. Like GDPR, I think they're already working on an AI directive to make sure that we have those ethical boundaries, that we have those balances and checks. The first thing that ChatGPT does, it doesn't give you sources. That's why I like the Bing version much more. You see the sources, you know where the data is coming from. With ChatGPT, yeah, it's stale data, it's old data, it's 2 years old. It's stale, you don't know where it's coming from, and there's no context, no data, and you can't see where it's coming from. And yes, true. It has to be regulated.
It started in the last few weeks. I mean, where the regulation and looking into it, like in Europe especially.
And everything that can disrupt society has to be thoughtful. It can't be by commercial parties. If we do that, then there's no end to it, I think.
We know that governments are already stepping in, obviously. What happened with Italy quite recently, you know, and OpenAI had to make changes as a result of that, which they did quite quickly, which shows that the seriousness that they're applying, you know, these developers are applying to this kind of regulation. And it's only going to follow suit elsewhere as well. I mean, you know, that if they're going to respond to it quickly, then we can potentially trust it more. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I think that's a step in the right direction.
Well, I think that it's the same as GDPR, as you said, Thomas. This is one of the key issues in European thoughts, is that if it's going to impact on the security and the day-to-day life of our ordinary citizens, then it needs to be government regulated. So, and I think they should just take the lovely Danish woman who gave all the fines to Google and all the other guys and just let her do her thing, you know, and make sure that this is, when we do AI in Europe, it's going to be on European data. We're going to vet it for bias. We're going to vet it for source. We're going to vet it for all this stuff, and have the same credibility when we look the unsuspecting, normal individual in the eye and say, okay, so we've got this tech under control.
We need to know that in business that's going to apply in exactly the same way. But because we can't see those controls, because a lot of what we do is going to be automated, and a lot of the implementations that we're going to have is driven by automation and RPA and all other kinds of stuff that uses AI, we need to be comfortable that what's happening in the back end is compliant, is regulated, and it is clean data, and it's trustworthy.
And that's exactly what I mean by microsegmentation, because I don't mind an AI helping me drive my car, but I don't want that same AI phoning up the bakery and giving my orders, right? So, you know, specific AIs for specific purposes. That's the safe way to move forward, I think. And then once we've got all that under control, and we know that it's safe, we know that it works, we have regulations, then maybe we could open the door for interactions between AIs for whom it would be good to interact, right? From our point of view.
So I think it's incredible listening to the fact that you think government can deal with this. I come from a country where government definitely couldn't deal with this. And one of the things that I've noticed since I've been in Europe is every single time I go to Google, I have to acknowledge and accept terms and conditions. It's insane. I come from a market where we have no regulations, and it's the Wild West. And regulating AI in Europe is going to make Europeans feel a lot better, but the rest of the world is likely to run with unregulated AI. And since we share the same planet, I wonder how useful that's going to be.
Somebody lead the way. GDPR is now in effect for like 5 years, 2018, I think, 2019. We see in regulation in America, California is adopting their own regulation, partially through that. So we are still one big economic bloc. If you want to do business with us, we are the second world market. Yeah, you should. A company should adhere to that regulation. So if we are not in before, there will be no boundary. So.
Sorry. Yeah, it's up to the countries that are leading the way, like you said, to really set the stage for the rest of the world, really. And it's, we're seeing that now in Europe, which I think is great. Will other countries follow suit? And again, it's a responsibility for governments in each country to make sure that those regulations are adhered to and look at what's actually working.
Yeah, I would also say it falls on the vendors too. Like, in our case, we have customers all over the place, heavy European focus for us. But when we look at privacy, we tend to default our privacy controls around GDPR because it's the most strict. So I think if vendors step in and kind of take that approach of saying, okay, what's the hardest regulation to the hurdle we need to overcome, everybody else by default would get some of that benefit. Now I get certain, in the US, I live in a state where privacy is non-existent, like it's just accepted. But I definitely see a lot of what's in CCPA, and like that's pushing more national, and I do expect the US will adopt it at some point.
And we have seen that big companies' self-regulation doesn't work. Look at the broken YouTube, IP, intellectual property, copyright, that kind of stuff. It's really broken. You can't do anything without having a notice of they monetize, demonetize, depending on what they want,
Yep.
they do. Self-regulation doesn't work, so somebody else has to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm looking at the government, I'm looking at the EU to make that happen.
But I also think that we're looking to the governments on this side. You're not EU anymore, but in EU we're looking to the government because I think a lot of us, when they did the GDPR rule set, we were just like, I don't know, I was massively skeptical. Okay, why? What is this? Why do we need that? I've never thought about that in my business at all. And now, suddenly, it's something we think about every time we do something, right? And that is only because it was pushed from the top down and enforced. So I think that the things we learned from the GDPR enforcement makes us have that confidence in our government. So you can actually help regulate this because we will take it seriously when you say we have to. The fines need to be big enough. We all know that. But
does it come as a result of us getting things wrong, though, to have to enforce those kind of regulations? I mean, with AI, are we waiting for something disastrous to happen before we say, let's push the button on this, the compliance now, because look what happened, look what could be the case. And I don't want to be in a world where that happens. I don't think anyone else does, certainly not in business when your customers are relying on this information.
I think that just happened last week. I mean, there was ChatGPT had a bug. It was returning the wrong data to the wrong people. So when you start to look at vulnerabilities in the platforms that are running this, and how is it secured? How do you make sure your data is private and managed and maintained? Like as soon as there's a breach of one of these things in some way, it's going to be a natural response.
I just think we need to be a bit more proactive. Sorry, go on.
No. And we saw that when Bing released their virtual assistant, it took the internet like 2 hours to make it racist. So how long will it take for AI to pick up on things that people are coordinating to do?
Yeah, bias.
Like that 4chan, Reddit kind of forums to inject data into the AI. They will coordinate it, for sure.
Well, if it's learning from 4chan and Reddit, then God help us.
It is learning from that, all the internet is scraping data.
So I want to take a step back, and David, I'm hoping you'll maybe comment on this. Since you talked about you sent folks to training, did that help you establish guardrails for your organization for what folks should and should not do? And then I'm curious from the rest of you, like how are you kind of instructing your team to set those guardrails internally from a business resiliency and safety perspective?
So I think we obviously take client data really seriously, despite being in South Africa. Obviously, we hear about a lot of breaches and we see a lot of fines. Although from a regulation point of view, we have very similar legislation to GDPR. What we haven't seen is anyone actually getting fined. Okay. So there's a threat, but no follow through yet. So we are very conscious about data and what we can and can't do with data. That is something we push down on our team continuously. I don't think that any of the training that we did, and we all went through Amazon SageMaker training and we did some Azure training as well, none of it really emphasized that. Obviously, Azure tells you if you're using their OpenAI instance, your data is secure and it's siloed, so they make a point of that. But it is sort of down there, point number 15. It's not point number 1, use us because. And so I think those guardrails are something that we're going to have to put in place, and we're going to have to think very carefully about. We haven't put any client data into any of these tools. I'm certainly not comfortable enough to do it. We have taken some data and anonymized it and put it into the tools to see what the results were like. And I do think these guardrails are something that we're all going to have to think about collectively.
Anybody else done anything around guardrails? How have you talked to your techs about how not to use public AI in some way, shape, or form? Like, it's awesome, it'll generate a script for you, but hey, don't put credentials in. Have you guys come up with any guidance for techs to not expedite their jobs in a risky manner?
Well, I only allow them to make the first initial thing, then they have to review, remake, and redo. So they have to, there's some vetting they need to do before we can use it. And not for real important queries or just for, let's say, we did that maybe for the Outlook remediation or something like that. How do you update Outlook? And all right, here's a command, and let's check it before we do it. But test drive, validate, and it's your own creation. It's a start, it's a beginning, but you have to finish it.
Yep.
We actually, because I have a few techs who were real early adopters of this technology, and when I came to them, I was all proud of myself, said, yeah, I tried this. And I said, yeah, we've been using it for a month. And I said, okay, so how? And they just swapped Google for OpenAI. So where they would earlier search on Google, they're now searching OpenAI, and they get, faster results. And then they vet it, then they use it, but they're not really, and we have that agreement, they're not really putting anything into it other than, normal questions or, safe stuff. Because I think there as techs, they're really aware of what this is for a monster, right? And so I don't think that the real threat from normal users is with this community, because we are aware. But once it gets into the hand of the everyday user, that's where you should get worried.
Yeah.
Do you have it?
We're also, sorry, I was just going to say, we're also very excitable as a community, and I think this is because this is a new technology to us as well, we know we've got to start promoting it elsewhere. We want to test it. We want to make sure that we're ahead of the game, certainly from an MSP perspective. I'm sure when I was working in MSPs, I'd be exactly the same. You want to ensure that you're testing it as much as you can. Does that come at the expense of using sensitive data? It really depends on what your interactions with it is, and how you want to kind of start promoting that internally.
I think as one driving the business, I will look at this primarily as an internal optimization, right? Like we did with automation, like we did with a lot of the other stuff that we do. It's going to be for the internal optimization of our own company. That's going to be the first use case.
And then the solutions will come as a byproduct of that, potentially. Yeah, so there's something I was talking about yesterday. We had that conversation about it, and I think it's probably wiser to start, like I said, beta testing this internally for ourselves, and just to echo your sentiments, really, we can start to then look at what works and what we can start to solutionize.
So I think one of the things that we put in place very early on, Copilot on GitHub, I mean, it's reasonably amazing if you sit and watch it. We have quite a big fintech division, and we do a lot of really custom software. None of that has ever been put into GitHub, and now it never will be. I mean, it absolutely petrifies me, and there's already a case of a developer suing GitHub because of stuff that was in a private repository is now coming out in public. And so I do think those guardrails are really not in place. And so certainly with our developers, it was you cannot use Copilot to feed any of our existing code in. You can play with it on side projects, but nothing to do with our core business.
But I think this again speaks to educating the public. So whenever we hear AI, the first thing we need to ask them, okay, did you check the sources? And secondarily, what did you put in? Because if you didn't pay for an output, what are you paying with? Your input, right? So it's the same as when we teach our kids how to be vigilant about Google search. So from that perspective, there's not that big a difference. It's just more efficient, and it will give you better answers that you understand better. So again, as long as we compartmentalize it into what is the use case for this AI, then I think it's under the normal education of people being, tech-aware and vetting sources.
Have any of you guys had any techs use it to actually write code for automations? Yes. Yep. Possible. Maybe.
Our CEO, he's a big spreadsheet fan, no surprise there. And he actually had one calculation that he just couldn't get to work. And he just, in plain text, put it into ChatGPT, do an Excel formula that will do this and this and this, and subtract that, and divide by this, and it fucking worked.
Is John here? We need to talk about what you can't put into ChatGPT. Have you guys used it at all for any of your, whether it be sales slicks or marketing proposals or anything like that? Have you guys used it in that manner?
I use it for my session on co-managed. So to build my session, I ask them what is a good chapters for co-managed, and you bring out a complete set of what you have to say, or what chapters you have to create. So yeah, it's a good way to start where you don't have, where it's like, how do I do this? How do I start? It's a good, you should read a book. It's like the summary of a book. Yeah, that's how we start. So yeah, we use it for proposals. And it's a good start, but the problem is if you do that 2 or 3 times, you get almost the same result. So you copy paste a little bit, and you notice that you will be generalizing everything. Mm-hmm. So because it's like a bullshit bingo. It writes a lot of things people want to hear. So I have to mention AI, machine learning, data analytics, and business outcome, and it will all be there. But the next one who does that will have the same, but on different written, but it has the same content, the same output. And so you have to make sure you keep things unique.
I actually used it to write the bio, which is on the app.
Oh, the same.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So, I put in a couple of facts. I wrote 30 lines myself, fed it into ChatGPT. It made me sound much better than I am. So if you read it, it's all courtesy of ChatGPT 4. And certainly we have engineers who are using it to script a lot of PowerShell stuff. And in preparation for this, I actually wrote a couple of PowerShell scripts using GPT. It was really good at adding complex visualizations in email outputs. So I'm producing this, I want to check the disk space, I want to email it to this person. If the disk space is between 0 and 50%, make it green. If it's between 50 and 75, make it orange, make it red. Adding that HTML styling is just not something an engineer would ever have the time to do. It does it literally as you put the command in. So from that point of view, it was reasonably incredible.
That's awesome. You think any of your engineers are going to use it to write their reviews?
Yeah.
I know one of mine did this year, he told me. So I guess as you guys are evolving your business and figuring out kind of what's next, what are some things we talked about regulation, we've talked about guardrails, but what is one thing you're really trying to make sure is in place before you're ready to adopt it further? Is it privacy? Is it regulation? Where are you guys feeling like you want to be?
For me personally, it's accountability. We need to understand who is going to be responsible for this when it makes mistakes, because my customers are MSPs and they're asking me that question. And if we start to implement these kind of technologies, are those responsibilities offset against the developer? Are they the responsibilities of the MSP? Is it the customer's responsibility? Do we need to put stuff in our contracts? Just disclaimers, for example, that we use AI. So as I mentioned yesterday, we could just screw everything up. Do we need to start introducing those kind of things? So accountability, I think, is key.
Anybody else?
I'm worried about the legal ramification of using AI. You're using somebody else copywriting, intellectual property that is scraped from the internet. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to use that data. And with the patent trolls you have in America that sues everybody because somebody has a small chip in their phone or whatever. When will somebody come to me and says, you're using AI-generated data, which is owned by me, now you have to pay me 3,000 euros a month to, and you can't say which data because you don't know, because you're just using an AI service. So for me, it's a legal ramification. First, I need to know if I can use it without any...
Like data classification, similar, similar with like open source and whether you can use it for personal or for public.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense.
Sorry, a question.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. The question is, there was this not so known writer by the name of Isaac Asimov who wrote a long time ago a sentence like, if you build a system that even idiots could use, in the end only idiots would use it. So what is your opinion on that?
As in, is this technology making us lazy? Yeah, I think, I absolutely agree. You've touched on it. Well, I think we all have really. We want it to drive speed and efficiency, but is that at the expense of just making us dumb? I think from a technical standpoint, potentially not, because we're, like Jakob said, where we are still, kind of developing this, and we're interested in it. We want to see how it, how it pans out for our customers, or for ourselves before we push it onto our customers. But yes, I think it has the potential to make us very, very dependent upon it. I'm sure perhaps some of us will agree.
And I think we already saw that if I see new engineers, they lack some capabilities that people have when IT was not so common, or it's more difficult to implement. Now it's a wizard, you go like next, finish, and your tenant is set up, and they don't know what they're doing, they don't see what they're doing, and AI will only enhance that because everything will be augmented for them. They will just say, create a tenant, but they don't know what's happening in the background, they don't know what is happening, and if an error arises, they will stare blankly at the screen.
Yeah, I think when we're looking at implementing it from an automation perspective, that's definitely going to be the case. When we're interacting with things like ChatGPT, then it also has the potential to educate us. And I think that is also important. So it's less likely if we're looking at it from a natural language processing, kind of using those interfaces where we're asking it things, we're getting responses. I think we're more likely to become less lazy because we're getting perhaps more intelligent by that. That really depends on the application.
So I have 4 children, and at least 3 of them do not care how things work at all. They just work. And when they don't work, they ask either myself or their mother to fix the problem. So I'm absolutely petrified of it. But I don't think AI is the problem there. I mean, you pick up an iPhone, it just works. Nobody wonders how it works. We've got literally billions of people on the planet using the internet with no idea how an IP packet moves around. So I do think it's almost a natural evolution. And in fact, last night my wife messaged me complaining about our eldest daughter, who's 22, complaining the pinball machine no longer works and we have to get someone to fix it, and it literally wasn't plugged in. I mean, that's the kind of level we're at now, So I'm not sure AI is the reason we should be concerned about that, but I do think it's something we should be concerned about, full stop. Yeah, absolutely, it is to the next level.
But we also have to remember that exactly that laziness is why we all have great businesses. Because people don't want to care about how it works, they just want it to fucking work.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue, I've said for a long time, like if you hate doing something in your life, automate it out of your world. And MSPs have done that wonderfully for years and years. It's the premise of the business. So this is just kind of that next level of automation. The challenge, and I think it was mentioned earlier, is the interaction. Like, so automate that, and if you have a more effective interaction with your customers, and you can level up your analysts. Like, how do you get them working on that next thing? Like, I'm big on that, just even in training for my team is, we'll make you good at your current job, but how do I set you up for that next job? So I personally think this will help folks move up quicker, but we do need the depth in troubleshooting. Like, that's that is definitely dying off. I see it with my kids as well.
But I think one of the funny thing about this discussion is that it's the same discussion, welders had when welding machines came, right? CNC machines. Because, and eventually it will push us up the ladder, right? There's no doubt about it. But also, yeah, some people are just lazy and they will not be getting the jobs they were getting before because now we don't need them, right? But it is kind of like the same discussion. But I think the only difference is that since this is tech and it can run on its own, doesn't need that human interface,
I think so.
Then it could go wrong.
I think Jimmy made a good point yesterday, in actual fact, and I think a lot of us echo that sentiment, that AI is not going to take our jobs, but someone else who knows AI well will probably take our jobs. So we need to be ahead of the game and make sure that we're not getting lazy. I think that's something that we all need to start adopting.
Do you guys have concerns around kind of the bad guys using ChatGPT to start attacking your business?
I mean, after this session, yeah. No, I think some of the things that's been mentioned about how it can actually do stuff so fast, so quick, it can evolve itself, it can pick up scripts of exploits from the internet and apply them without any hesitation, right? So from a security perspective, I think AI is one of the most threatening things in our business. But again, that means that you as a human need to use your brain, you need to level up, and you need to guard from the inside out against AIs. And so for the security business, that's going to be massive, I think, because that is a real threat.
Yeah, we've already seen it in some of the security certifications. They've said you cannot bring ChatGPT to the table because they know it'll answer the questions for you. It'll write your code, it'll write the exploits, it'll do everything. So, as we think about that, I guess, when you guys are thinking about, hey, what data do you put in? We've already talked about we do siloed, but are there any other things you're worried about from a security perspective to make sure that we're securing your customer data? I know we've talked about doing it in a silo, but or do you think you're going to use public, or are you guys leaning towards private where you can load your own data, or will it be a hybrid? Where do you think you guys will land?
Well, for me at least, private or constrained. So if I use it from a vendor that I trust, and he can tell me that, like with GDPR, he's treating that data right.
Okay.
So that would be where I would go. I wouldn't at all go to public and integrate that into my business right now.
Is there an expectation for vendors to disclose what and how? Like right now, I think about it, we have a privacy statement on our website. We talk about what we do, how we do it. Are you guys expecting vendors to start putting that information on their sites about, hey, how are you using AI?
Yeah, or at least delivering it if we ask for it, yeah.
And it goes for everything. I want to know how to deliver everything. And AI is a part of that, but I want to know how the security is done. I want to know how they answer to security incidents response. So it's a part of their full disclosure to us to align what we do with their business and with their vendor technology. Otherwise, we're doing what if we don't align our business? Because we have AI doing searches for threats, but if we don't respond to the threats in an according manner, the AI is useless. So we need to align and we need to disclose how they work. Yeah.
So you would be a little worried if somebody had a DPA where they said, hey, we're going to start using this third party to process your data? I'd hope so. I'm curious about your employees. I mean, as you're bringing this in, have you heard any concerns from employees about, hey, this is going to replace my job? We've talked about given them more customer time, but have you dealt with any challenges from employees around that?
They see it as an advantage, right? We want to grow, we want to scale, we want to be able to do more. We are always looking for people. There's always a backlog of things to do, so we hope that we can, that scarcity of workforce, we hope to solve that with AI, or potentially mitigate a bit of that and let us grow farther and faster than we want. But that's the only constraint I hear, the good side of the AI.
Does anybody else have any pushback from employees worried about they're going to be automated out of a job?
I mean, I remember when we started doing automation, then we had that pushback. But seeing the job market as it is now and looking at the size of the next generations to come, I think nobody in IT is the least bit worried about their job security.
Yeah, the shortage is a benefit for most.
Yeah, and IT is bigger than ever. We used to do small business servers, we used to do small stuff, and now we're doing cloud, AI, machine learning, data analytics, business analytics. We do a lot of more. So AI is good for us to help us to master more than what we're doing. So I'm not sure, I'm not afraid of my job, but my job is going to be more than it was ever before. I can do more.
Well, I don't know if you're using small business server, probably was busier back then, I imagine.
Let's not go into that.
More troubleshooting at least.
I haven't heard SBS in forever.
You know, you get a manual then. Eh? You could go through the manual, look what's happening, and
What's a manual?
Now you just type it into an interface. It'll tell you what the manual should say to you. In terms of, we talked about it earlier from customers. What questions are you hearing from your customers around this coming into you guys about? And I know the question came in earlier as well, but are customers pushing for you guys to integrate in this business, or are they showing concern around it?
So we have customers looking to us to advise them as to how they can use AI.
Okay.
We have absolutely never fielded a question about whether we use AI and whether we're moving towards AI. Obviously, we moved to SentinelOne with Enable, so we started the AI conversation with them then around threat detection. So it isn't completely new to them, and they understand that the technology is based on that. But the majority of our questions are, how can you enable us to use AI and machine learning?
the same. They ask us how they can enable AI, and how we can help them using AI, but also data warehousing, analytics, and those kind of stuff. But we're an IT infrastructure partner, so we don't do those kind of things.
Okay, cool. I know we're coming down on time, so I wanted to open up to the floor. If there's questions, we got about 5 more minutes. But any other questions from the floor about anything we discussed or anything we may not have discussed and you want to know about? And I can't see hands or mic runners, so.
People are hungry.
Or if you're hungry, just raise your hand.
No one's hungry? No one's hungry.
Nobody's hungry? That's awesome. All right, we're going to go another 45 minutes or so then. These guys are going to go 45 minutes. I'm going to sneak out the side door and I'm going to go eat because yesterday they ran out. All right, kind of one last question from a business perspective. We've talked about regulation. We've talked about kind of training for employees. We've talked about all these different things. What is the one thing that excites you most about it? Like we started off on like the negative, like what scares the shit out of you and like makes you worry, but what excites you most, and where do you really want to see it go in the next 5, 10 years? And I'm really stressing the 5 to 10 years because I think it's going to change a lot. But what are you looking most forward to or hope to see come out of it?
So from my point of view, I'm hoping that our knowledge workers actually get some time to think. Because at the moment, the majority of our knowledge workers spend their day doing things. And certainly as a leadership team, we find ourselves in the same boat. So hopefully we can get rid of some of the mundane and actually spend more time actually thinking and strategically growing our businesses.
Okay. Awesome. Alex, you have
the upskilling, the new skills and new opportunities that we're going to get, I think is quite exciting. But also the fact that because there are so many unknowns at the moment, potentially one of the key points for us to start concentrating on, which I'm looking forward to more than anyone. I don't have staff myself, but it is just to focus more on people and start to understand what their capabilities are individually. Often we employ people, I know previously when I used to, we employ people to do one job and they end up doing something completely different. Let's start realigning that with what people are capable of, their human interactions with our customers and aligning themselves to our values and that kind of stuff. The things that we're kind of missing out on at the moment because we're so busy.
And for us, it's like AI has always been there. We have seen SentinelOne has been doing AI for years, and for me, the natural language processing is the one that's really kicking it in. Having that be able to have an idea and to create that directly without having to deep dive as a technical expert in it. You said like creating HTML or creating a Power BI report. Now everyone can create a Power BI report. You used to have to send that to somebody and it gets in a backlog of one analytic guy and he creates on his ID because he's an analytic guy and it comes back as like 2 or 3 times forward. Now they're like, I want to have that data with this and this and this and I want to report on it and it's there. So people will be enabled to create their IDs and enable their IDs to fruition. It will be there. And I would love to see that happening, that engineers will get ideas out and be able to execute on those ideas.
But as a business driver, that is exactly where I see this going now. And I must be honest, I haven't got fantasy enough to do 5 years on AI because I think we have no idea what's coming.
Agreed.
But what I do see is a massive driver as when we started with automation, and I see that as an internal optimization of our company. And I see massive gains here as when we do with automation. And I think this is going to be way more powerful. Also because you can broaden the stuff you do because now you don't need, I mean, it's going to raise everybody's base level if it works as we think it will work, right? Yeah. And I mean, that's going to be great for business to get that out. But I think you said one funny thing that was that you hope to free up time so you can contemplate your business. And I would argue that in this instance, maybe we should take out time to think about our business before we integrate it, right? Because if we just do it blindly to hope it will free up something, then it's going to go like automation. We all did that because we think, oh, then we can sit with our coffee and have fun and let it self-heal, right? And we're more busy than ever. I think this is going to be exactly the same.
Yeah, fixing problems, looking at what the problems are, fixing those first before trying to solutionize it. Yeah, absolutely.
That being said, I'm going home and integrating it.
Okay. Well, thanks. Thank you all. I really appreciate the time. Appreciate the questions from the crowd. I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your Empower trip, and I will let you guys get to lunch. Thank you.